From the Homestead Studios in Santa Clarita, California, this is a Headache Soul production. Welcome to Just the Tip-Sters, America's favorite true crime podcast. I'm your host, Melissa Morgan, and with me today is my handsome and talented co-host, Joshua, the Dream Killer Bevan.
The Dream Killer? Uh-oh. Which specific dreams did I kill now?
That was the comic's name for his penis when he got his wife pregnant.
Right.
Called his penis the Dream Killer.
The Dream Killer.
So
yes, that's me, my entire personality.
So Joshua and I went to see beloved comic Greg Warren on Friday night at the Ice House in Pasadena, and the middle act has like two teenage kids, and his wife is pregnant again. And he said his wife was like, had all these plans for her life, you know, going to go back to work and all that. And then he's like, hey, don't make me pull the Dream Killer out. Yeah. But that's what he calls his penis. So that's why I just had to call Joshua that. Not that you're a penis, but
I can't even imagine starting over at this point.
Oh, my Lord.
I have three adolescents and teenage
they're
boys,
well placed apart.
Yeah, but like starting with babies now. Ugh,
well, Isaiah's only 10, right?
Yeah,
that's actually kind of far apart.
It's I can't. I'm saying at this point I can't. Let alone whatever his are 5 years older than mine. You're
right. Yeah, his were like one was 16, I think.
Yeah, 16
and 14.
Oh, okay,
something like that. Yeah. So then he has and then his wife's pregnant. Get off of her, dude.
Yeah, I'm good.
Yeah. Get off of her.
Yeah.
One of the beautiful things we learned on Friday night watching Greg Warren is not only how amazing he is, but he got his comedy start in Cincinnati. I did not know that. I'd always thought, I'd always heard from him. He lived in Missouri as part of his act. It's, who he is. But he also was talking recently on his special, The Salesman, that he was a salesman for Procter & Gamble for Jif Peanut Butter. And P&G is located in Cincinnati.
Got it.
And he lived for 5 years in Cincinnati. And he started his comedy career in 1995 at the club I started, Go Bananas.
So cool.
I know, it's so crazy. So after the show, he told us, he closed with a story about what happened to him in Cincinnati, a very funny evening about a semi-carjacking where he was carjacked sort of just to become like an Uber driver before Uber was a thing. Story. Yeah, it was hilariously. And he said, he starts by saying, I was leaving a club and took a friend home, and then it goes from there. And I was like, well, at that time, there were only two. There was Go Bananas and there was Funny Bone. And I'd worked at both of them because by then Ray Combs Comedy Club had closed. And I was like, I bet it was Go Bananas because he couldn't have really gotten in to do stage time if he was just starting at the Funny Bone. So I'm going to bet. So after the show, I did not expect him to be in the hallway. Did you?
No, not at all.
Yeah.
I was searching for the bathroom.
Right.
And then I eventually walked out and, you guys are hanging out.
Yeah.
You're hanging out with the headliner. Cool.
Totally.
Hey, what's
we're
up?
Best friends now. I just walked up to him and I said, were you leaving Go Bananas when that happened? He goes, yeah. How'd you know that? And I said, I managed it. And he goes, you managed Go Bananas? And it was like, I was a rock star to him,
so cool.
Which was so fucking funny. I'm like, dude, you're the rock star. I managed a fucking comedy club. And he's like, what, when? And I said, 90 to 92. And he said, I started in 95. I came after you. And he's like, do you know Dr. Chang, who was the owner of the club? And I go, yes, sir. He made my life hell for 2 years. I absolutely know Dr. Chang. So yeah, it was lovely talking to Greg. And he is just as wonderful in person as he is on stage.
So cool.
Yeah, he's a terrific guy. And I think
such a good dude.
I think you had a good time too, didn't you?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I had a great time. No, I appreciate it. Thank you for exposing people to me.
Thanks for saying people, because I am sitting here fully clothed. I am fully clothed at all times when Josh was at my home.
Yeah, no, it was super fun, and I hadn't been to Ice House in
me either in so many years.
Long.
Yeah,
and it's like still the same.
It is, but better.
Except that they put they have a gorgeous brick wall behind the stage, super comedy, and it's and they covered it with a screen,
a big screen. But they have to
ads or whatever,
right? Advertise people coming up. I'm with you, and the brick is pretty. What I was taken with, and I'll just be honest, having been in a bunch of clubs and managed quite a few, the seats were padded.
Yeah.
They're like that tufted, quilted leather or fake leather pleather, whatever. So comfy.
Yeah.
And I did something terrible, Tip-Sters. I made Joshua sit next to a smelly goth with a bunch of face piercings and a fan. And she was fanning herself. And so thank God Joshua does not have a very keen sense of smell, whether it's allergies or whatever. I do. I'm like a Belgian Malinois, and I smell shit. I should be a drug sniffing dog. I smell shit that might have an idea of happening. And I was like, oh, fuck no. I sit next to her. So Joshua, the whole time, he's like, you sure you don't want to sit here? I'm like, nope. Sit your ass down. You're going to be tortured. I had
no idea why until I sat down, and I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah. And then she's fanning herself.
She's got this paper fan, and every single waft, it like blew her entire BO.
You're welcome. That was a shitty thing. And I sat there in my comfortable seat like, but I could still smell her a little bit. So I was like, do you smell that? And Josh was like, oh yeah. Yeah. I smell that.
Oh yeah.
I'm like, okay, good.
Why do you think I didn't share many of your
Brussels sprouts? Because you were like, I'm going to vomit into my own hand.
I got to keep everything like closed off. You're like, these taste delicious. No, I can't taste something right now. I gotta close. I am all in the a bubble zone.
I am in my own bubble. That's hilarious. I'm sorry. It was pretty mean of me to do, fun. But I enjoyed it so much. It was so much fun. I'm a terrible person. Terrible person. So after that, if I could ask the Tip-Sters to do something for a terrible person, which would be to, write a review, tell a friend about the podcast, follow us on any of your social medias or on whatever streaming platform you listen to. We would be very grateful. All of that helps people find us, and that would really be helpful. We could use that right now.
For sure.
And this episode is brought to us by our friends at Graveline Tours. If you go to graveline.rip and in the promo area, put the promo code Tipster40, you get a nice healthy 40% off of any of the tours. And having lunch with Tipster Charlotte and Tipster Fiona yesterday, they want to go on the Manson's murderous spree. And I believe it will be me, Joshua, Charlotte, and Fiona.
Fun. Sweet.
I think, it'll be you and 3 chicks. You'll be like our pimp daddy.
Yes.
Yeah. Chicks of all ages.
Yes.
Yeah. Keep your hands to yourself, perv.
And is Blaze running this one too?
I don't know.
Oh.
I don't think there's that many drivers or tour guides. So good question. I do not know. Blaze is not interested in your bullshit. So just like fucking get over yourself, you fucking weirdo.
But there's some fantasy world somewhere where she is. There's a variant in some.
Sure, you just keep telling yourself that. You keep going that direction, weirdo. Okay, so this is a case that I have a little bit of experience with. It's so weird. It's so weird, the cases that draw attention to people via media and the ones that don't. And this was, I guess, April of 1989. And I was working I was the office manager at a printing company in Latonia, Kentucky, which is very close to where this happened, which is Covington, Kentucky. And a beautiful little 7-year-old girl went missing. Jenny Sue Iles, Jennifer, but everyone called her Jenny Sue Iles. She's the daughter of Susan and Jerry Iles. And she was a beautiful little normal blonde-haired girl who was sweet and kind. Her cousins were some of her best friends on an obituary that you can find online where people write messages. Some of her school friends said Jenny was the first friend I met in kindergarten. She was so welcoming to everyone. We used to sit on the floor and play games together. She was always so loving and giving. And this case affected me a lot as a child because, I know there were other kids that went missing, but it just didn't happen that often.
Right.
And now I'm questioning myself, like, did it and no one talked about it?
Oh.
I'm only saying this because of the Carol Sue Klaber case in the 70s, where I had no idea.
And you had mentioned maybe your mom had kind of shielded you from it.
Maybe.
Yeah.
But, didn't say much when I bought Helter Skelter at a yard sale at the age of 12.
Oh, okay. Well,
yeah. And my grandmother used to subscribe to True Detective magazine.
Oh,
so,
okay.
Yeah.
Well,
and I would hide them in the middle of my Archie comic books and read those.
Yes.
So,
you got Archie on the outside.
Of course I did. And True Detective on the inside. Yeah.
Oh my God.
Nothing wrong with me.
That's so tracks. Oh
nothing wrong with me. Joshua and I were at Small Left Turn. We're at the comedy club Friday night, and the same comic who calls his penis the dream killer said, I am from Bath, Ohio. And he said, Michael Jordan built a big house there or something.
He's got this whole bit set up.
I know. And like Melissa Big Mouth. You know what else? You know what else happened there? And I go, Jeffrey Dahmer, just like as loud as I can fucking scream it. And he goes, yes. Yeah. Just I'm like, son of a bitch. Why can't I keep my mouth shut? It's like, this is not a trivia game show. And I'm yelling out the name of all serial killers.
Someone names a city. You just have to name the serial killer
who's there. He lived there. And his father and Jeffrey Dahmer's father were, what was it, best friends who played tennis together?
They were like tennis partners or whatever. Yeah.
And he's like, hey, how's Mr. Dahmer's kid, Jeff? Oh, I don't know him.
I don't know him.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
He's eating good.
Yeah. Oh, man.
I know. But I have to yell out. Did you notice the woman behind me goes, yes, and started clapping? No. I think we were the only two weirdos.
Oh, man.
And Joshua and I are up front in the front row. And I'm like,
in the front.
Yeah, and I'm like, Jeffrey Dahmer. Just like Rain Man. Definitely 252 toothpicks. I'm just the Rain Man of serial killers. Yeah, I know. Nothing wrong with me. Not a damn thing.
Yes.
But I think you are right that I think a lot of people's parents, it was a very different world. You got the news at like 7 and 11 or whatever. That's it. 3 local stations. A 4th station moved in that was the Fox station. That was it.
Yeah. And there's not a 24-hour scrolling news cycle on TV, and then all the apps that you're scrolling on. That, yeah, nothing gets hidden from today. But back then,
it's still like I am still stunned that I was 2 years behind Randy Sellers and had not heard of his case. There were actually other people my age that did not know either. The people that I knew that did know him were intimately introduced to him as friends or, went to church together. So I felt crazy. This kid's, been missing now for, 43 years. And now, yeah. Anyway, so I was old enough. I was an adult and I was, managing this printing shop, union printing shop in Latonia. And in my world, radio was everything. So I heard it first on the radio driving home from work that this little girl was missing. And then it was on every local news channel, the way things are. But here's just one more, drop in the bucket of why I love me a podcast. Those newscasts are gone.
Right. That's it.
If I were to petition the, television stations, I might be able to find them, but you can't get them now. They're not online, unless I were to maybe beg or plead and somebody mentioned online 9 months ago. Oh, it was another podcast host. She said, there's nothing about this case. I found a few things on newspapers.com from the Cincinnati Enquirer, from the Kentucky Post, but not a lot.
Wow.
I'm going to have to go on memory. And I hope that my memory, it seems like what I remember was sort of backed up by the things I found.
Got it.
But I can tell you at the time it was huge. And I do remember thinking, this is odd. a 7-year-old girl goes missing. Her parents, do they know something? Who is around her? Siblings, neighbors? And the way this turned out is really odd. I don't know if they got the correct person. This feels very much like a rush to judgment. Spoiler alert, which you'll find out and you can always find yourself. The person arrested and convicted was later acquitted. So Jenny's case is still open.
Okay, wow.
All these years later.
Wow.
Heartbreaking. Her mother passed away in 2016.
Oh.
Never really getting justice or knowing who killed her daughter, who abducted, raped, and killed her daughter.
Oh my God.
Yeah, and left her in an abandoned house.
Oh, geez.
So I, again, was an adult, and I remember hearing this story that this little girl's missing. And I will also tell you, Covington is a city atmosphere. There's not a whole lot of, green space or large lawns or farms or anything like that. It's very urban. And I remember thinking to myself, should I volunteer to help find her?
Oh.
I did not need to lend a hand. The entire city of Covington looked for her.
Wow.
It was, police officers too, but the community came together in a way I was unfamiliar with. Again,
Amazing.
It could be my own filter, but I was an adult. I was very young 20s, but I was an adult and I was working full time. And I was like, I should go help look for her.
Cool.
I didn't know a lot about the city of Covington, but I was like, I'll look for her. And I didn't need to.
Yeah,
it was such an overwhelming outpouring of, So it was about 10 days later, a man who was collecting aluminum to cash in found her body in an abandoned house.
Jeez, okay.
10 days later. And things were not good. Her shirt was pushed up. It was clear she had been sexually assaulted. There are things I could say that would make this so much worse, but certain photographs and information were asked to be withheld from the jury because they're so awful.
God.
Animal activity.
Oh, jeez.
Where a larger animal like a dog would have drug her around.
Oh, no.
Insect activity in her body cavities.
Oh, God.
Because of injury. Yeah, it just, I do believe when they arrested the suspect and a jury was formed and the trial began the following year in 1990, they did some things that I thought were pretty revolutionary. It didn't seem that way by 1994 or whenever OJ went on trial, 95, 96, because I don't know if you remember, but they took the jury to like his house and they had replaced all of the white representing things with black artists, and all the pictures going up the stairway were replaced with African, queen.
Oh, geez.
Paint. It was very, his defense team was really a dream team.
Yeah.
A terrible, terrible, awful dream team. But anyway, they went to this abandoned house. There's a picture from the Cincinnati Enquirer, beloved photographer Jim Osborne. Anyone who has lived in that area, he was a photographer for so many years, like decades. I'm going to say 30, 40 years for the Cincinnati Enquirer. And he had a great eye. He had a great eye for, you don't realize it at the time. You just get your newspaper and you think it's supposed to be well done. And then when you get older, you realize, you look at these pictures like, well, especially when you look back at old pictures, you're like, oh, that motherfucker did a good job. Wow. He didn't just take a picture. It was like centered perfectly. So one of the pictures I found was 6 women and 2 men jurors. So I know there were probably 6 and 6, or
Okay.
because I don't know for sure the exact makeup, but there were at least 6 women and 2 men, and I mean more men probably, but standing in front of the abandoned house.
Wow.
They took the jurors on a field trip, and that to me was pretty rare back then.
Sure.
I hadn't heard about that till the OJ trial.
Yeah, I I didn't even realize it was a thing until there's every once in a while, you hear about one of them. I'm like, wow.
I mean, that's pretty big. If
Yeah.
you want people to see, and I think that's a really good tactic. I'm not visual. I'm much more auditory.
Sure.
But if you try and describe something to me or show me drawings of it, I'm going to be like, I don't understand. That's a square.
Right.
If you take me there, I'll be like, oh, I get it. There's 2 stories. She was found in the upper story.
Right.
I get it. It's abandoned house. I mean, I think that's a very invaluable piece of information for a
Sure.
juror to see. And if it helps you make a decision one way or the other, it's worth it.
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
get the expense, the difficulty, keeping everyone sequestered, getting them all on one kind of bus or van to transport them, having, corrections officers watch them the whole time so they're not off trying to, pick up evidence or something,
Right.
I mean, it's not an easy thing. And I'm sure it's done more often than I know. And it was probably done way before 1989. I just didn't remember that. So seeing this picture from 1990, I was like, that felt very revolutionary for the Kenton County District Attorney to take them on a field trip. And also the picture of the 2-story abandoned house where she was found is sobering.
I bet.
It was a beautiful sunny day when this picture was taken, and all of these, people are standing in like the front yard looking up. It's very sobering.
Wow.
So going back and forth in time, Michael L. Funk, who was 23, he was incarcerated in an Ohio jail because he had pled guilty to gross sexual imposition of a 19-month-old.
Oh my God.
Now, I will say that the 19-month-old was a male baby, which a lot of people feel was why he didn't do this. There's other things. I know he was, indicted and convicted of her murder, and he was given, he was already, in the Pickaway Correctional Institution in Orient, Ohio, because he pled guilty to gross sexual imposition. He had been, he was still serving a 4 to 10 year sentence, but it's a minimum security prison. So Kentucky authorities had sent Ohio officials a request to have him sent to Kentucky to face new charges. There were some technical defects along the way, but it's being rewritten, and he is, transferred to Kentucky for his trial. And if he had objected to being transferred to Kentucky, they would have just had a court hearing, and it would have been like, too bad.
Wow.
There were issues, the girl, this is just one weird layer in this case. His girlfriend that he was living with in Norwood, Ohio, which is about 20, 25 minutes north of Covington.
Okay.
It would be an easy trek if you have a car.
Right.
Michael Funk did not have a car. His girlfriend had the only car, and she had the keys.
Okay.
2 friends who lived in the Norwood area with him said he did not know how to drive, and he was never known to really leave the Norwood area.
Okay.
His girlfriend also said he didn't know how to drive, that he didn't have a car, and he didn't know anyone who he could borrow a car from or would drive him to Covington to pick up a girl to rape and kill her.
Yeah, well, okay.
That gives me some doubt. It feels to me if you are, and I understand why this would happen, but it feels to me if you are arrested and indicted on gross sexual misconduct with a 19-month-old baby, they would try to pin every child rape or murder on you.
Oh, sure.
I mean, I don't think they give you like, oh, that was a 19-month-old who was a boy. This is a 7-year-old who's a girl. I don't know that they're going to,
Right.
give you any leeway. It's pretty odd. I mean, I don't know how or why. It doesn't mean he didn't do it.
Right.
I think that if it were today, they would have to probably come up with a lot more evidence. And I bet you to this day, there are people who know more about this case in the area who are like, they don't need more evidence. It was him.
They have, yeah.
But it's officially still unsolved. And we're going to give you a number, especially those amazing tipsters in the, Tri-City area,
Right.
the tri-state area. If you, Kentucky, Ohio, Indiana, you're all together. And that part of the world is right near the river. I mean, it's a 15-minute drive from everywhere.
Right.
Covington is like a city on the river that so many people know about, probably knew about. And, if you have some information, if you know anything, we're going to tell you where to call. But in the meantime, the case was really criticized because of the way the police handled it. And I understand why. I still also think, why is there so little information about this? Why is there so little? A child rape and murder. I mean, the second someone mentions it, I'm like, oh yeah, Jenny Iles, because it was such a big deal.
Yeah.
And again, I know there were kids before that and kids after that, but it's just, I wish I had better information as to what it was that they got him with and charged him with capital murder. I wish I had better information as to what pointed them to him. Is it just like any molester?
Yeah, just he's going to continuously throw up red flags forever.
Yeah, I guess he wasn't in prison when she was abducted, raped, and murdered, but he was then after that. Yeah. So he was moved eventually to a higher security prison, and then in Lebanon, Ohio, and then he is extradited to Kentucky for the trial. I don't have a number of days that the trial went on. I again can tell you the pictures showing the jurors was very sobering, and they looked like they were taking it very seriously. I mean, the picture, I guess it could be the perspective of Jim Osborne, the photographer, but just such a great job. He also has pictures. There's pictures online, Northern Kentucky photos, and then also Cincinnati Enquirer of her funeral. Her funeral had like 300 people.
Wow.
And they were members of the Emmanuel Baptist Church of Covington. So here's her parents, oh golly, saying goodbye to their 7-year-old daughter who knew all of the words to Jesus Loves Me. And she sang it all the time. And they played it at her funeral with her small white casket and all of these sprays of flowers all over it. It was a 40-minute funeral. The minister was also the chaplain for the Covington PD. And he said, at least Jenny's parents and friends and family don't have to fear anymore what happened to her. We can't bring her home, but hopefully one day we will go to her. It was pretty tough for everyone. And there is a picture of her parents standing and one of her aunts standing next to her father, and that woman's face. It's another Jim Osborne photo. The pain on that woman's face is it's like a painting. It's like a painting. I'm gonna show Joshua. Just look at the woman to the right. Look at that face.
Yeah.
The pain on her face.
Oh, God.
I mean, you very rarely see, of course people are grieving, But that woman's face, it's just, it's so, it's very heartbreaking. So the Reverend Bill Stith said, Jenny is no longer on Banklick Street. She is in Hallelujah Avenue. And I don't care about the whole religious thing, but I think that any words you can give to soothe a parent or a friend or a family member or another child is a beautiful thing.
For sure.
Yeah. This is a commentary that was in the Cincinnati Enquirer in May of 1989, even before Michael Funk's trial. And it says, as the parents of Jenny Sue Iles attended her funeral on Monday, they had to be aware that their grief is shared by the entire area. When a child dies in any circumstances, no sense of loss can approach that felt by the parents. A child, after all, symbolizes the marriage itself. Yeah. A child is a token of love and hope and faith in the future. That's a remarkable sentence. Families who don't really know Mr. and Mrs. Iles have been as outraged as they could ever be at her disappearance and the long travail through which the family and friends have gone through when finally discovering her body. Among them have been the men and women and children who devoted every available moment to scouring their neighborhoods, hoping to find some clue as to her fate. She was walking to visit a friend to have a play date.
Walking by herself through her neighborhood.
Yeah, like a block.
Oh, boy.
Among them are those who'd hoped and prayed for her safe return. Violent crimes are so much a part of contemporary life that most Americans scarcely bat an eye when they see statistics about homicide, rape, assault, armed robbery. But the overwhelming majority of these crimes are on adults. When the victim is an innocent, guileless child like Jenny Sue, a statistic becomes a stab in the heart, and onlookers begin to feel like failures, as though some inadequacy on their part was responsible for letting it happen. In a figurative sense, they're kind of right. The making of a better world depends upon the making of better people. Yet so long as even one sordid killer is free to roam the world, no one will be fully safe. That is what community means. No one's safety can be greater than everyone's safety. The message of Jenny Sue's death is a challenge to those she left behind, a challenge to become better, more caring, more loving people. As care and compassion and love spread, hopefully there will be fewer tragedies like this one that was visited upon this Covington family.
Wow.
I think that's one of the more beautiful things I've ever read.
Yeah.
Taking responsibility for a community, saying we need to create better people.
Yeah.
I know this probably hits close to you as the father of three boys, worrying about their safety and also wanting to create good citizens.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which I know you do.
Well,
I know you have very open talks with your boys about their safety and others' safety.
Yeah.
And that's, I mean, I'm not saying any parent is wrong. In 1989, you could walk down the street.
Oh, sure. Yeah, absolutely.
With not fearing your child would be kidnapped and not fearing as a child. If Michael Funk did this, even after his acquittal, I do not know what ruse he used. I don't know if this was done by someone more local. I mean, I have way more questions than answers, but I will be honest, when I found out his conviction had been overturned, I was stunned.
Wow.
I left, the area in 1992, and I believe it was overturned in 94 or 96. It was overturned a few years after he was convicted, and I did not know that, didn't hear that. I assumed the killer of Jenny Sue Iles was indicted, convicted, boom, gone.
Wow.
Nope. Her case is still an open case. How is this possible?
Yeah.
How is this possible? So it was shown that Jenny was suffocated and she had suffered sexual abuse, obviously. In the trial, there was 29 hours of deliberation by the jury. There were 13 days of testimony and 21 witnesses. I mean, I just feel like a lot was done to try and convict Michael Funk, but, so he is convicted and then he's acquitted in 1992. So he spent 2.5 years in prison and then he, is acquitted after.
Wow.
I know, it's just, and no one's ever been held accountable for her murder. I mean, when I, was just looking for something else and found this, I thought, are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? I like to believe and trust law enforcement that they find the right person, convict them. And I know that everyone did, a good job as I'm seeing jurors standing in front of the house. And I know it wasn't just like an open and shut thing.
Right.
There must have been something convincing that this man, who others say didn't drive, didn't have money, didn't have keys to the car, didn't have a ride to Covington, I mean, he had obviously done other things, very shitty, felonious things. So if there was convincing evidence that he did it and then convincing evidence to overturn that, who did this?
So odd.
It is really super odd. And I will tell you, Covington is slightly spread out, but not like if you were looking for someone here, where it's a lot of canyons and outdoor areas.
Sure.
It's a lot of buildings. It's a lot of businesses and small, 18th century German built, 2-story Victorian, great architecture, but not big yards.
Got it.
It's so odd to me that this happened. Also that it took 10 days to find her, I'll be honest with you.
Yeah, I guess upstairs in an abandoned building. Who would have thought to walk in there? Maybe
a guy looking for aluminum.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not even going to say I bet there are people that know, but I bet there are people that know. And I don't care if you think it's a tiny piece of information, if it's a rumor. I'm going to urge you, Northern Kentucky, Greater Cincinnati, Southern Indiana, Tip-Sters, if someone came to you, if someone you knew told you something, if you saw something or knew something, I'm giving you the number to the Covington Police Department. And I'm going to ask a couple of things. One is I'm going to ask you to call them. The second thing I'm going to ask is if you don't get any sort of answer, I'm going to ask you to call or email me. And we'll just keep bugging them until they answer something.
Right.
And if that doesn't work, I will submit a FOIA, Freedom of Information Act request.
Yeah.
And if that doesn't work, I will call on every law enforcement officer I know in Northern Kentucky and Cincinnati and rain hellfire down on the Covington Police Department. And I will do it.
I don't have any doubts.
I will do it. And I'm going to say this and sound kind of pompous, and I can.
Mm-hmm.
I'll do it. So if you know anything about the awful abduction, rape, and murder of Jennifer Sue Iles, please call Covington Police Department, 859-292-2222, 859-292-2222. If no one gets back to you, I'm going to ask that you call me at the Tipster hotline at 832-TIPSTER. That's 832-847-7837. If you would prefer, email me at jttipsters@gmail.com. And all of this goes for if you also have a tip on a missing person or unsolved homicide, or you just want to suggest a case, please call us on the Tipster hotline. Please email us. You can find us on any of the social media platforms. Just the Tipsters Facebook page, at JT Tipsters on Instagram, at JT Tipsters Pod on Twitter, and more cowbell.
If you would like to support this podcast and get early access and other cool murderous swag, go to patreon.com/justthetipsters.